Hey everybody, welcome back to the NerdNest podcast. I don't know what episode we're on. I think we're on like episode 16 or something. Every once in a while, I like to throw that in just to give people an idea how long we've been doing this. And 16 episodes. These guys have joined me, and it's been awesome. So thank you guys for joining us. We've got Carrie is here from the Fox. Carrie, what videos you been working on, man?
There's a few that I have. I recently finished up a series. Well, I want to start a series of videos called Retro Storytime. That was a lot of fun for me, and the title was the first games that I can remember playing. I also just finished up a quick video that I just wanted to talk about because I've had a few people ask me about the latest drivers, AMD's Adrenalin 23.7.1 drivers. They still do not work on anything that is it's targeted for us is the Z1E or any 7840U device.
Awesome. And Russ, why don't you tell us what videos you've been working on?
Yeah, hey everyone. So I just finished a video on Gamma OS, which is a custom operating. It's an Android kernel, basically specifically for two different Anbernic devices, the RG505 and RG405M. And it's amazing. Like, it basically just fixes all the software issues that I had with that device. And so it's kind of neat. Like, I love the idea of that at this point only the hardware is holding it back. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to worry about all that software stuff, which is great, and so it does really kind of bring it up on par with the Retroid Pocket devices, like in the point where the software just kind of works the way you would expect it to. Always happy to see that. I just wish that Anbernic themselves could kind of get to a point where they can release it as opposed to waiting on someone else to do it.
And before we get to Rich real quick, just watch the TV in Russ's background and, let us know in the comments down below, what game is he playing on that thing? It'll be a fun little thing that we play when Russ is here on the show. By the way, real quick heads up for everybody, Russ is not going to be here for a few weeks. He's going elsewhere, and so we will have to soldier on without him, or I guess, Russ would say Navy on without. I don't know what you would say.
Yeah, we would say Navy on. Yeah.
Navy on.
As is commonly said in the armed forces.
Sailor on.
All right. Rich, what have you been working on, man?
Yeah, I just released a video actually addressing the Switch 2 rumors that we talked about last week. I dug a little deeper. It turns out that the same person that leaked that this dev kit is in Spain did in fact leak that they're using a Pro controller to test out the games on the dev kit. So the developers do not have access to the Switch 2 controller, according to this leaker. So that's been interesting. So I talked about that in other Steam Deck news.
Awesome. That means if they're using a regular controller, that means that you'll be able to do regular stuff without a weird gimmick getting in the way, right?
That's what I said, right? So like there's two ways of looking at it. One is that they're keeping their new controller secret, and maybe it's wacky and they want to keep it a secret because it's wacky. But also I think the other side of looking at it is they're testing it with Pro controller, testing with traditional controls. So traditional controls should be a thing in Switch 2 or whatever the next Nintendo console is.
Awesome. That's very cool. And the video that it's actually not up yet as we record this, but it comes out tomorrow, and then this will come out. Actually, by the time you guys watch it, it will have been yesterday that the video came out, but it'll be my full in-depth review of the ROG Ally after having lived with it for about a month, and I've got a lot of good things to say and a lot of bad things to say about it. So finish watching this podcast with me and the guys, and then go watch all of those other videos that we were just talking about. All right. Before we get, we've got a lot to talk about today. A couple of the stories were actually submitted by you guys. This is something that I think I want to try new. I actually got the idea from Rich because I was watching one of your videos and I was like, well, that's a good idea. So basically, the way that I'm going to find a good way to pull good comments and maybe give us a thing to talk about is if you guys leave a comment on this video as a good discussion topic for next week. And if I pick yours, I'll end up replying to you with a Steam code giveaway, and hopefully you can get to it before everybody else. But we had two comments that I thought were really interesting. One from DC Powered, and they said, what changes would you like to see in a Steam Deck 2? and we'll get to the and also part afterwards. But let's start there. What changes would you guys like to see in the Steam Deck 2? Carrie, I'm going to let you start us off with that. What do you think? What would you want different about the Steam Deck 2?
So one of the things for me, the Steam Deck 2 is Valve's opportunity to flex a little bit more than they could otherwise, because now that they have numbers to back up and have a better understanding of the addressable market. Because before it was going into it and it was kind of vague, like you had Gabe Newell say, they anticipate to sell millions of them. So now they have a better idea of what type of initial sales that they get because they know their customer base. So the type of stuff that I would love to see for a Steam Deck 2 outside of just what you would anticipate for performance improvements is obviously continuing along the line of trying to maximize performance, but keeping an eye on low power. And there's multiple ways you can do that, and I've discussed this in my Xbox handheld video. You can go wider on memory buses. You can add infinity cache. These types of things that are helpful for balancing out the CPU, because if you're going to lower memory clocks to address available bandwidth, but also to make memory go to a low power state, but still feed the GPU, and having infinity cache to still feed the CPU. So there's those types of things that I would love to see, because it's effectively the only people that have actually done that is Apple. You look at the M1 Pro and the M1 Ultra or the M1 or M2. They're the only company that have done that, and they spent a lot of money on size and space on silicon for increasing SRAM size. So cache. So that's how they're solving specific issues. So that's one thing that I really want them to do. But then outside of that, I would really, really love it if Valve's hardware division really flexed their muscle and looked at every itty bitty component and min-maxed every component along that way. Like if they're going to, since they know they're going to sell 3 million, whatever, Steam Deck 2s, get a display that is going to, I don't think that they're going to make a smaller Steam Deck, because I think that they live large. Like you look at Gabe Newell, he was rocking a 42-inch plasma playing WoW on it like 10 years ago or something, like 13 years ago. So they're always having that. So if you're going to go large, and Steam Deck is ostensibly the largest handheld still, is if you just made it like a little bit larger, you could probably go to like a 9-inch display if it went bezel-less. Or like 8.5-inch if it went bezel-less with what it's at now. I never measured what it's at, but it has gigantic bezels on it right now. Yeah. So if you can just remove all the bezels, make a custom display, go OLED on it, still keep 800p, possibly go 900p. Don't go anything over that, because it's really just going to be a waste. That's the type of stuff that I would love to see, is going the extra mile to make sure that all the components that are going to be taking power outside of the package is minimized as much as possible, so that total system power is not leaching power and being this vampiric type of drain that's happening on the stuff. Because people are like, oh, I set it to 15 watt. Why is it taking 27 watt? I would love to see if you set a 15 watt TDP, and with all the stuff that they've done, they can get that down to like 20 watt total. Really, really flexing and trying to push hard on that. That's something that I think everyone would appreciate, and is where we really need these devices to go. And I think one of the biggest concerns, that even with the Asus RG Ally, is battery life from people. They just, that's probably the biggest complaint that I've been hearing. And it's a challenge, but that's something that I would like to see really addressed.
Yeah, so you mentioned the screen size. There's a new device that's coming that we'll talk about, and we may talk about later on in the show, that has, I think it's an 8.4-inch screen, which I find that to be really interesting. But Rich, what do you think would be really good additions or changes that you'd like to see with the next Steam Deck?
Yeah, while Carrie was talking, I had a tough time thinking about how I would answer this, because I feel like I don't have much other than sort of like the obvious things that you would expect: more power, better screen, that sort of thing. I think the thing I came up with was like a user replaceable battery. That would be cool. Like if I could just have an extra battery, like I do for my camera, and then just replace it after I'm done burning one battery, that would be great. And I think that's really it. I mean, I think all the other stuff is sort of obvious to a degree. I want more power. I want a better D-pad. That would be great. and I want a nicer looking screen. Yeah, I can't think of much more than that.
What kind of D-pad do you want? Do you want one that's like the typical cross D-pad, or one that's more like the Xbox controller D-pad?
I do like the cross. I like the DualShock as well. So I'm pretty open. It's just that sometimes when I'm doing certain like fighting game maneuvers, I can't pull it off on the Steam Deck, but I can pull it off on a PlayStation and on an Xbox. So that's still to this day, after, a year plus of owning the Steam Deck, I still can't do some of those moves.
Now, how do you feel about the D-pad on the ROG Ally? That one has the circle.
Better. I like it better.
You like it better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Russ, what would you change about the Steam Deck if you could change anything?
So most of it's already been discussed, but definitely screen improvements. I do like the idea of 900p. I've been testing a lot of mini PCs lately that just can't quite get 1080p, and I found that 900p is a pretty good sweet spot where you get some nice clarity, but still it's not pushing like 720p, which you can definitely see some muddiness. And so I do like that idea. But the thing I thought of was ports. And so, we have that one single USB-C port, but I would love to be able to see, USB 4 to be able to use like external GPUs very easily, or just having more of them, so we don't have to rely on a USB hub all the time would be pretty nice too. That's really it. I think everything, power, battery and stuff like that. User replaceable batteries are really a nice idea. Like, the old laptop batteries, you could just switch them out. That would be awesome.
So for me, one of the obviously a better screen. I never really had a complaint about the Steam Deck screen, but then when I got my hands on the ROG Ally, it's so much better. And I don't think it's better because it's higher resolution, but it is a much better screen. Like the colors just pop off of that screen, and by comparison, the deck just looks super washed out. You can kind of fix that in software with, what's the plugin called? I forget.
Vibrant.
I forgot.
Vibrant Deck.
Vibrant
That's right.
Deck.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, Vibrant Deck. You can kind of fix that with Vibrant Deck, but it's never going to look as good, in my opinion, as the one on the ROG Ally. So I know people want OLED. I don't care necessarily if it's OLED or if it's LCD, as long as it's just not as washed out as the Steam Deck screen. As far as like 900p, sure. 1080p, I don't think that that's necessary. I really personally don't think that 900p is necessary either. I think 720 or 800p is perfectly fine at a screen size of 7 inches. But with Carrie saying go up to 8.5 inches, then yeah, I think 900p makes sense at that point. For me, what I'd really like to see, and this comes from, do I have that controller nearby? I don't have the controller nearby. I've shown it on the show before. It's the Alpaca 3D printed weirdo controller that has 2 gyros in it. I would love to have the Steam Deck the Steam Deck 2 have 2 gyros, because after using that controller, the gyro in the Steam Deck just does not feel as good. It's still really good, and it's way better than the fact that the ROG Ally doesn't have gyro activated at all. I would love to see 2 gyros in it. A couple episodes ago, we were talking about trackpads and whether or not they were useful or not. I would love to continue to see trackpads in the ROG, or not ROG, in the Steam Deck. Sorry, I just got done making a video about the ROG Ally, so it's kind of like I've said it a lot. I would really like to continue to see the trackpads, but if they ever got rid of them in order to make it smaller, I would like to see the exact same functionality that you get with a trackpad by having your, like when you touch the screen, have that same menu options that you have, because I think that is just the menus on the trackpads for games that are, I like to call piano games, where there's a billion buttons. They just make games that you can't play any other way playable. And the same thing with the region select and stuff like that. So I would like to see that stuff, and I would like it to also have an optional controller that has all of the inputs that the Steam Deck has, but it's just a controller so that I can hook it up to my PC and just play the games that way, where when I'm playing on my deck, I play games a certain way, and when I play it on my computer, I have to play games a different way because I no longer have all of the same inputs that I had before. So let us know in the comment section if you're watching this on YouTube. What are some things that you'd like to see happen with the Steam Deck 2? But DC Powered also made another question. They said, what accessories should exist for the Steam Deck but don't? I am very interested to hear what you guys think about this, because honestly, when I think of the Steam Deck, I don't think, like, I have a lot of accessories for it, but it's a device that's very self-contained, and you don't really need a lot of accessories for it. I mean, we've all made videos about, like, this is the other crap that you can buy with your Steam Deck, and like, I made a video like that because, you know what, there are people who want to know this stuff. But what are some things that you think, okay, nobody's thought of this yet? And Rich, what do you think?
I don't have anything no one's thought of. In fact, you stole the answer I was going to give for that question, which is Steam Controller 2. I would love a Steam Controller 2 for Steam Deck or Steam Deck 2. I'd love to see that. And, you know, it's basically the main thing that's missing for me when it comes to docking it and playing it that way, because yeah, I'd love to have the trackpads available to me and the 4 back paddles. I definitely use that a lot with boomer shooters. So yeah, I think that would be cool.
Before we move on, how many of you guys use all 4 back buttons?
Not all
Just
the time.
emulation. Sorry.
You do? Okay. I use 2 of them. I never use all 4. I use my Steam Deck's too far away. I use whatever the top 2 ones are. I think L4 and R4. I never use the bottom 2 ones. What do you guys use them for? Russ, you said in emulation you use them a lot?
Yeah, so in EmuDeck they have like hotkeys and stuff, so I'll use that sometimes. But I've never programmed any button on the back ever. Like, you know, like I do that all the time with like other controllers that have back paddles, where I'll make my reload button one of them, you know, things like that. I've never thought to do that on the Steam Deck. I don't know why. Like, they're just kind of function buttons for me when I need to quit an emulator, and that's basically it.
All right, that's fair. So since you're talking, Russ, let's hear it. What are some accessories that you think that you'd like to see for the Steam Deck?
Yeah, it's hard because I was thinking about it and I was like, you know, when I got my kill switch like case and skin and stuff, I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, I'm done. Like I have exactly what I need to complement the Steam Deck, and like everything else is kind of self-contained. The only thing I can think of is that back in the Xbox 360 days, they had like an external keyboard thing that you could plug into the bottom of your controller, and so you could just type really quickly if you needed to. Yeah, exactly. And so there are times where I wish there was a more universal or streamlined keyboard experience, other than, you know, people say, oh, use the trackpads on the virtual keyboard. But it's nice to sometimes have a physical one. And I've got like little Bluetooth keyboards that I use when I need it. But it's one of those things where I still kind of dread going into desktop mode if I need to, just because it's just not the same experience. And so that's one accessory I wish was just a little bit better, something that would make the desktop experience easier.
Yeah, I don't do anything in desktop mode without my keyboard, without an actual keyboard, because it's just such a pain to try and type on that the screen. Do you guys use the thumb pads to type, or do you use the D-pad and the A button? Carrie, what do you do when you're in desktop mode but you're not using the desktop stuff?
So I bring it up with like Steam X, and then sometimes I'll try to type it out how they want you to do it, which, if you've ever seen someone really good at typing on a Steam Deck, it looks like the same people that are excellent at typing using gyro controls. It's like, oh, I need to aim perfectly. Just use gyro, just like that. And you're like, oh, yeah, that looks easy. And then you do it, and you're like, wait, why is my brain not working like this? And then if you've ever seen videos of people typing, no, I just type on the screen. And it's atrocious. And it's why I've always been a big proponent of physical keyboards on these devices. Which is
oh, that's right. Yeah, you're. I've seen you talk about it on online a million times, where you show a picture of like the GPD whatever thing that has the slidey keyboard underneath it, and I agree that's nice, but is it worth the extra money?
For a Windows handheld, yes.
That's fair for a Windows handheld, because that's like my biggest gripe with the ROG Ally is the fact that it's Windows, and that's kind of a nightmare. Anybody, go ahead. Anybody else have anything to add?
I only have like a joke accessory, and that's it. I mean, there's no other, like, the accessories have been done to death on the thing. So no, I mean, the only thing I think of, how Game Boy used to have like the magnifier that would
Got one back there somewhere.
I think that there should be a Steam Deck magnifier. Make your screen like 12 inches. Huge.
I
Fresnel lens on it.
guarantee that exists. Somebody has that someplace. All right. We also got a question that came in from Leopard Eye. They said, what are each of your favorite consoles? I know you're not all Steam Deck obsessed. Russ, start us off.
Why would you assume that?
Yeah, man.
What do you
that's
play
so
most
hard.
of your games on?
So if I'm playing at like home and on my like TV, then it's actually the PS5, just because there's so many like first person or first party games that I've got a huge backlog, and so I want to play those. And so that's the only game console that's hooked up to my living room TV right now. Like the Switch is there, the kids play that, but like my Xbox, I moved over here to the studio because I mostly use it for like work and demonstration stuff. And I think that says a lot to me, is that like if I want to sit down and play a console, it's going to be PS5. But that's only when I'm actually playing in front of TV, which is kind of rare for me. So most of the time it's using a handheld, and there's so many that are my favorites. But right now, it's usually the ROG Ally if I've got an hour to kill. If I've got an hour and a half to kill, it's the Steam Deck. So that's all just because of the battery life.
What about you, Rich?
Yeah, it's very similar. So I have PS5 console hooked up down here in my bottom floor, and I use that from time to time. The Switch is hooked up upstairs, and the kids use that. But mostly I'm playing on the Steam Deck. I have been playing the ROG Ally a lot the last few weeks, so that's been kind of my main driver. But other than that, it's been the Steam Deck.
Carry console of choice?
Console of choice. I don't own a PS5 yet, so it would only be Xbox Series X that I have, and that's just it's a Game Pass box basically. Otherwise, the machine that I use the most is my GPD WinMax 2, which I have hooked up to my 4090, and it's replaced my desktop. So that's what I use all the time. I have multiple WinMax 2s, so I have another one that's upstairs that I use and actually play in handheld mode. I've actually been playing a lot of Diablo 4 on the WinMax 2.
Nice.
So that's what I've been using. I must say though that the Steam Deck feels the most console-like out of all of them, and it just feels like it just feels better. Like you're like, oh yeah, feels like a console, feels like an appliance. So yeah, I still think that the Steam Deck still has a level of value. I also, weirdly enough, I like docking the Steam Deck, and even though it doesn't get any more powerful, I like using a Bluetooth controller and just playing on the Steam Deck docked on my TV, on my living room TV.
The big picture mode on the Steam Deck and on Steam in general is fantastic, especially after they did that upgrade. I liked the original big picture mode. I thought it was really good. Everybody else disagreed and hated it and thought it was an abomination. I always thought it was just fine. But then when they did the new one, and it's basically just the Steam Deck operating system, the same UI, I think that looks awesome. And I keep waiting for Valve to launch a box that I can just put under my damn TV that's powerful, like an Xbox or like a PlayStation, like a beefy machine that doesn't have to worry about heat, that doesn't have to worry about battery life, that doesn't have a screen in it, and ship it with the Steam controller too. The first time that I had the Fox on this channel, like we talked about, the Phoenix APU and whether or not that was going to be like a future Steam box system, and we still haven't seen what if they're ever gonna do that. But I feel like the Steam Deck is awesome, but I want something that is console-like to play my PC games, and I want it to run Steam OS instead of Windows because I don't want to have to deal with that. But to answer Leopard's question, or Leopard Eye's question, for me, I have all of my systems are hooked up to my TV right over there on the other side of my desk. And this week, the only thing that I've been playing is my Switch because I wanted to finish Zelda, which I finished about 2 hours ago. I finished the game.
Nice.
So look forward to us having that spoiler discussion, everybody. Now my Switch is just going to go into hibernation for however long it takes before Nintendo drops the next game that I'll play. But I like, if I'm playing games most of the time, it's on my PlayStation because it's just a really, really good experience. And when I'm talking about a console experience, as far as like handheld, it's the Steam Deck because it's more comfortable for me. But let us know in the comments section what it is that you guys have been playing. Like, what's your favorite console? That's a good question, Leopard Eye. Thanks for sending that in. And leave comments, and we'll talk about your stuff next week. All right. I have a section in the show notes for gameplay, what you guys have been playing. Nobody put anything in. You guys all been too busy to play video games this week, probably?
Well, I talked about a lot of the games that I've been playing recently.
Oh, okay.
I talked about it in the last episode, where I talked about Killbug, and what was the other one I brought up? It was a 2D platform. In any case, Pizza Tower, I believe.
Yeah.
Was what I brought up. And then I released a video shortly after that on Friday, just talking about sort of the hidden gems on Steam Deck. So 5 hidden gems that I picked. So it was those 2. Dredge was another one. Signalis, another good one, and the 5th one is escaping me, but those are the games that I was playing kind of hardcore the last 2 weeks.
All right. Carrie's just grinding more Diablo 4.
Yeah, it's got its hooks into me real bad. I could just keep playing it. I had to pull myself away from it because I have so much video stuff that I have to get done right now. Like, there was an avalanche of stuff that came my way all at one time. So I had to stop playing, which is unfortunate because I'm just almost done. I have one more bit of renown to get, so the global renown, so all of my characters get all of the bonuses and stuff. So it's just the last bits of Paragon points. But yeah, I've been getting ancient gear in Diablo 4. So it's just like Blizzard just knows they have this down to a science. They just know exactly when to hit you with that dopamine hit, that it just like, oh yeah, I got to keep going. They got it down to a science, man. Like when you see it drop and you see that like darker orange, whoo, man, that's just like the best feeling.
Well, speaking of Diablo, you dropped something in our Discord channel real quick. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So I don't know how true this is, but this was on Twitter that I saw going by because Twitter has been helpfully sending me stuff that's FTC adjacent because I've been looking at a lot of FTC stuff for the Xbox stuff that's going on. And because I see adjacent stuff, there's other people that have been posting stuff, and it's like, oh, Diablo 4 is coming soon. I guess they're really confident that they're going to the injunction is going to be denied. They're going to, close the deal on Activision, and as soon as they do, Diablo 4 is coming on, Game Pass. And there was like a Brazilian advertisement saying that Diablo 4 is coming to Game Pass. So, my biggest hope here is that I've heard that the game save from Battle.net gets transferred over. So no matter where you play, it's cross-platform. What I'm hopeful for is that all of these achievements that I have gotten just pop up for me automatically. That's like hope number one. But yeah, so that's pretty cool if this is the case. But we should probably hear more. We're supposed to hear more about the FTC decision later today or tonight.
Yeah, it was one of the things that was going to be like the things that we were going to talk about today, but it hasn't come out yet. We're recording this on Monday, July 10th. It's like 4 p.m. Eastern time right now. So that's why we don't know what's going on with that. And I'm sure that we'll talk about it next week. I remember when Diablo 4 was just about to come out, Carrie's like, I'm not getting it because it's coming to, I think I'm holding out hope that it's coming to Game Pass, and now it might be coming to Game Pass. Do you regret spending the $70 on it, or are you just happy that you picked it up?
No, yeah, it's been a blast. I should have just trusted in myself that I'm just a huge Diablo fan. I bounced off of Diablo 3 real quick, so I think that was flavoring my whole kind of decision process. But Diablo 4 has been just fantastic. So just been having a great time.
I'm excited to get back to it because I played it. I got to Act 3. I got my horsey, and then I was like, I felt guilty because I was like, I gotta finish Zelda. So I booted up Zelda again, and as soon as I heard the little musical notes in the background, like I was all in, and I had to just stick with Zelda until I finished it this morning. So I'm excited to get back to Diablo. Although the fact that Carrie's been like hardcore mainlining this game like nonstop, and he's just barely ready to finish up his Renown, which I think you have to finish before season 1 comes, means there's no friggin' chance for me. So I'll never get all that stuff, and that's fine. That doesn't, like, I don't have to have all the stuff. I don't have the FOMO or whatever. But you know, I guess I should have stuck with it. But anyway. All right, so let's move on to the news. And Rich, why don't you pick one of the stories out of the lineup, and we'll talk about it real quick.
So maybe a weird one, but I am really excited about the single player Black Panther game. So do you want me to kind of tee it up?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I saw that it's a new studio, the name of which is
Cliffhanger Games.
Cliffhanger Studios, and it's headed up by someone that was previously head of Monolith. So they've worked on Fear, No One Lives Forever, Condemned, and of course Shadow of Mordor, Middle Earth. So I think that sort of experience, because the team also has experience in God of War, Halo Infinite, and games like that. So I think they have the right experience to make a superhero game. And I know it's a little bit controversial, but I feel like EA has been really rock solid on single player games in the last few years, despite the fact that they're the ones that were like, yeah, single player games are dead. To be fair, I guess that was in 2010. So a lot has changed since then. And I think that sort of their recent output has almost been an admission that they were wrong, right? Like, single player games are not dead, and they've shown us with things like It Takes Two, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Star Wars Squadrons, Titanfall 2. So they've done a lot of good single player games, and I think this is going to be another one. I'm crossing my fingers for this one.
I'm very excited for this. I've given EA a lot of heartache over the years, constantly saying bad things about them. I'm not a fan of their stuff, and I haven't been a fan of their stuff for a long time. But that quote that you're talking about, where they said single player games are dead, like, that was just one guy who doesn't actually work at EA anymore, and people still hold on to that. And I'm not saying that you were doing that, Rich, but people still hold on to it. And anytime EA says anything, they're like, see, remember when they said this? Scumbags. And I'm like, guys, just relax. Just because somebody said something that you didn't like once doesn't mean that they're forever the bad guy. But people like to have a bad guy, and it's easy for us to hate on EA, especially because they have made a lot of crappy decisions in the past. Russ, are you excited for this game?
Yeah, I'm thinking about, like, do I want to play as Black Panther in like a third or first person game? And the thing I can think about is, like, well, I want to make sure I have weapons. And Black Panther to me is not a guy who really has weapons all the time. And so I'm hoping at that point that they have other characters from like the Black Panther universe, like the warrior women, like things like that. They got those staffs and stuff like that would be cool to play with. And so I do hope that they have like more playable characters now that I think about it. But yeah, I think it'd be great.
I don't know about weapons. That's a good point. But I do expect like gadgetry, right? So I expect kind of similar to Spider-Man and Batman, that T'Challa or Black Panther will have some sort of like some sort of gadgets. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Carrie? Are you hyped for Black Panther as a single player game from EA?
Well, I really enjoy that Batman Arkham Knight fighting combat mechanic, which I guess was also Prince of Persia Sands of Time type of combat mechanic, where you can smoothly go in between stuff. So as long as they have that whole thing and they add a little bit more to that, I'm always a sucker for that. If it's like in a new type of, I like it in Spider-Man. I'm sure it's going to be in Wolverine. So for Black Panther, it's going to be another thing. So as long as they have that with some type of twist, like they did with the what was the system that they made in Shadow of Mordor?
Nemesis.
The Nemesis system, yeah. So if they can well, that's also owned by WB, right? Like they patented it. So WB owns the patent on that, and then no one can use it at all.
Correct.
Yeah. So I would like them to make something. I'm all in agreement with all of you other guys. Is like, it's been funny because like EA's always voted the worst company out of all of them, and they didn't even do anything. It's just that everyone just automatically voted for them. But then you look at the other stuff, like it's like the nondescript characters, and it's just respawn. And he's like, "Oh, where are we going, Papa EA?" And it's just like a bunch of bodies on the ground, and he's like pointing a gun
All the
at it.
studios they've killed.
Yeah. But then Jedi Survivor. I actually really loved It Takes Two. I played that with my son. We had a blast. There's been a bunch of games that EA has been coming out with. They're like people are like, oh, this is nice. So yes, I am. I feel confident that they're going to do a good job. I think EA's influence. They do a good job as a publisher, working with developers, bring out the best. So I'm very positive. I'm only optimistic about this.
I'm very hyped for it, but I don't think that we're going to see it before 2025. Like, it just got announced.
I think it's I think it's like that same thing like Wolverine. Like when Wolverine was announced, it was like 5 years away. So we're probably not going to see it like till like 2028 or something.
Yeah, maybe it'll probably be 2028. Like from the Microsoft FTC Discovery stuff, like. Microsoft thinks that basically 2028 is the launch of the next hardware, right?
That's the next gen, not the mid gen. Yeah,
right. So we'll probably see this Black Panther game will probably be a launch game for whatever the next generation of stuff is. And you know what? Great, because I got too much to friggin' play as it is. All right. So moving on, Russ, why don't you pick one of these stories out of the show notes, and we'll talk about it for a little bit. You can key it up.
Yeah, so there's a topic here about Xbox emulation coming back, and so Modern Vintage Gamer did a video basically, and I saw the notes yesterday when they were pinging in the Discord server. But basically, they found another workaround for the retail mode for emulation with Xbox. So if you wanted to play your retro games or whatever on the Xbox, we talked about this a couple months ago. I think probably episode 4 or 5 or something like that. And my stance hasn't changed on it. There's still a development mode that's available, and so you pay your $20 for that, right, to be able to get the sandbox, and then you can play your games within that. And I think that's still what I completely recommend, because I don't like the idea of circumventing something that Xbox has already set up for us, and so I like celebrating the fact that they're even being cool about that in the first place. We don't see that in the other consoles. And so I get it, like there's people who don't want to pay that $20 development cost or whatever, or they just want to be able to have it on their home screen. But me personally, I just love the fact that they even offer that development mode. And I'm so behind. Like, I think even in that last podcast episode, I talked about how I need to make another video about it because mine's so outdated. I still need to do it. It's on my list. I just haven't really had a chance to get to it. So.
Well, Carrie, you use Xbox a lot. Are you interested in this at all, or do you have yours in dev mode or in retail mode?
No, it's only retail mode. I also don't do any emulation on my Xbox. I just have way too many PCs that I do it on, so it's just typically not a place that I would play it on. That's all.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's a great deal. It's $299 for an Xbox Series S. You know what I mean? And if you wanted to play up through PS2, like there's a lot of great options right there. But all the same, it's just. I just don't like the idea of having to circumvent anything. And I worry that if I'm going to use retail mode, like, is it going to come in, like, there's a possibility at that point. I'm not saying it's possible, but what if I get banned? Like my account that I've had since 2006, like I'm not going to do anything to jeopardize that, And so that's the other thing for me is like all those achievements or whatever, like I'm never going to lose that stuff. And so, I don't even want to risk it.
And one thing that wasn't clear to me, I watched a video from MVG, but there's a Patreon involved, so you pay $2 a month. Is that right?
Yeah. So basically, the way that you do it is you have to pay to get like the right file through Patreon. Just watch MVG's video about it if you want to know more, because he's got more information about it. But you do have to be subscribed to a Patreon. So a second ago, Russ was like, people don't want to pay $40 a month or $40 for dev mode.
Yeah,
but $2.99 or $2 or whatever a month, like fair. You do you. I ain't doing that. But what were you saying, Rich?
No, I think I was just that was it, right? Like it was a little strange to me, I guess, that you're paying a Patreon to access it when, yeah, you could just do developer mode for $20 and it's flat instead of paying $2 per the month. And then just like Russ said, dealing with potentially getting banned or just whatever Microsoft may end up doing.
I can see how it would be attractive to somebody whose only device is an Xbox. I can totally understand why that person would want to do this. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that person probably doesn't listen to this podcast because, you're watching a gaming podcast. You probably have multiple devices. And I'm going to guess that you definitely have a gaming PC to play on. Maybe you don't have like the wall of handhelds that Russ has, where he's got his shelves and he's got the Ambernick whatever and the flippity boppity boo or whatever all these different devices are. That's understandable. But for the people who only have an Xbox, I think that you're better off just putting into dev mode because you might pay this $2 or whatever. And then even if you don't get banned, Microsoft might be like, wow, we figured out how to detect it. We're going to stop. You can't do that anymore. And sure, you didn't get banned, but now you sent, $10 or however many months it was. You sent money to this person and you got to use it in the meantime, but now it's gone and you can't get that back. So I think that you're better off just doing dev mode or, I think, Russ, you tweeted out this week that like Ambernick is having like a crazy sale, right? What's like the cheapest
it's
one
modest.
that people should get?
Yeah, so if you wanted to just play like up to like PS1, you can get a device for $50 at this point. Like the RG35XX is a vertically oriented handheld, and even the older ones like the RG350P is on sale for like $60, and that'll play up to PS1. So there's definitely like other ways that you can spend your money if you want to play your retro games, and it's nice to have them on the go as well. But yeah, I get it, and I think that there's an allure to the idea, too, of just being able to open up your Xbox. You can either play Halo Infinite or you can open up RetroArch and start playing retro games. Like, that's kind of very convenient, In dev mode, you do have to reboot into dev mode and play it and then reboot back into retail mode. But it's just, 15 seconds each way. And so, yeah, I get it. The convenience thing is there, and the retail allure is kind of cool. But I think that we should just celebrate that we've got dev mode available, and that's pretty awesome. It's like an awesome concept. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Carrie, why don't you pick a story out of the rundown, and we'll talk about it real quick.
So for me, it would definitely be AYANEO's latest device that they're talking about, their Kun device. Mm-hmm. That is something that I have a little bit more information myself on right now. And I don't know if it's been detailed specifically, but last I heard is that they are going to have a DGPU in there. I don't know if that has been revealed specifically. I definitely don't have any inside information to that. But I would anticipate that they're probably going to be using something that's similar to what the GPD-G1 has, which is an eGPU solution. But the thing that I just discovered while I've been testing out the GPD-G1 is you have to force Smart Shift enabled in the BIOS, which AYANEO can do for this device. But at that point, also in the power config settings on Windows settings, you can actually change so that when you're on battery, you can say disable the DGPU and only use the iGPU. And when you're plugged in, disable the iGPU and only do the DGPU. But the really cool thing about Smart Shift, AMD's Smart Shift, is when you have Oculink connected to the G1, and right now I have it connected to the GPD Win 4 with Oculink, effectively, the DGPU becomes a part of the system. So the system doesn't see it as the 7840U plus the 7600M XT. It becomes, you have the 7840U, which GPU is actually this GPU. So I was messing around with it. I only had it at 30 watt TDP, and everything was going super slow. And I'm like, why is everything going so slow? And I see my package power, and it's saying 54 watts. I'm like, what the hell is that? And I take a look at my CPU core clocks, and they're all 500 megahertz. They're like dying. They're just choked for power. And I'm like, what's going on? And like I see my GPU power from the 7600 MXT, and it's taking 50 watts, and 4 watts is for the CPU. I'm like, oh, my TDP that I'm setting is for the entire thing. So then I boosted TDP to 150 watts, and all of a sudden my CPUs have power. The GPU goes up to 120 watts, which is what it maxes out at. And then I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And from that, once I saw that, I was like, oh, this is going to work just fine on the AYANEO Kun, because you're just going to set the TDP like you normally would. Like you just say, TDP is this. I want TDP 80 watts. Okay, there it is. Bam.
That'll
now
control where the power is going.
Yeah, so you have effectively however many watts into the GPU, the DGPU, and then however many watts to the CPU and Encore. And it handles that automatically. You just have to have Smart Shift enabled. So it's pretty cool. I think from a handheld perspective, that automatic function is really nifty. Plus they have like an advanced rebar type of thing, which is, what is it? Forget the name of it, but it's... effectively using, so there's the DGPU has its own RAM, but it can actually interface with the system RAM, and there's 10 to 15% performance improvement just from doing this integrated AMD solution. So it's just pretty cool. It's overall just a really cool solution. So if they were going to go down this route, I don't think that they would do this big of a chip. They'd probably use something smaller, because it even like the minimum amount of power uses 50 watts, which is tremendous. Like if you think if it's 50 watts for just the GPU and then 30 watts for the CPU, that's 80 watts on a handheld. That's going to be a toaster. So that's a thing to, unless you're just going to like dock it, right? And then just, have it be your dock solution at that point. But I know that there's people out there. There's a YouTuber, Angel Knight. He lives in China, but he always takes a GPU device and just guns it. Like he runs the Win 4 at like 55 watt nonstop. That's like, that's all he runs it at. And it's just like, dude, like, give it a break. So yeah, I'm kind of curious about where they're going to go with this outside of it just being bigger. The touchpads on there, I'm curious how they are accomplishing that, and if it's more than just mouse pads. Like if they accomplished what Valve is doing to some degree, that would be very interesting, but I would love to understand more. So just from like, I don't know, there's a lot of interesting stuff that is in this package. So I'm interested in what they're doing here.
Yeah, so just to catch all the viewers up with this, it's got an 8.4 inch screen, a 75 watt hour battery. Just for comparison, the I think the battery in the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally is 40 watt hours, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's twice and then some more battery than the Deck and the ROG Ally. It also has an infrared camera for Windows Hello, a fingerprint sensor, and it's like I don't follow it too closely, but there's got to be like the only ones that have trackpads. Like
Yeah.
I think that I don't think anybody else does trackpads other than Valve. Although I gotta say, the placement of the trackpads is terrible. It's the same reason why I hate.
Yeah, it looks really bad in that regard.
The same reason that I hate like the Nintendo Switch form factor is where they have like the right joystick is like way down low on there, and then all of these handhelds kind of copy the Nintendo Switch form factor with the right stick way down low. I find that terrible. These trackpads don't look useful even a little where they are on the device. It looks just way too low. But that means it's not nearly as wide as it might be the same width as the Steam Deck, but it also has an 8.4 inch screen. So there's that. Rich, what do you think about this thing?
Yeah, I think what Carrie said clarifies a few things for me. So the first thing I thought of when I saw the trackpads is what happened to the AYANEO Next 2. So it sounds like this is maybe the rebrand of the Next 2. Because the Next 2 was the one with the trackpads and the DGPU and things like that. And it also clarifies the 75 watt hour battery, which, is nice regardless, but even more necessary if you do have sort of DGPU option or something like that. So that's pretty cool. I do think those trackpads are rough. My understanding in terms of implementation is that the trackpad implementation for the Steam controller mouse was just Steam controller trackpads were just like additional mice, right? Like that's how Windows recognized it. But then Valve had to do all the software in the back end in terms of Steam input and things like that for that to actually mean something. So in that way, it seems like it could be the same thing, but Valve has to sort of incorporate it and say, we want to support this, and they have to support the whatever the drivers are, or whatever, I don't know, at the lower level that they need to sort of decide and say, yeah, we want to implement Steam input for these trackpads. Otherwise, it's all up to AYA to kind of develop their own software for it. And I expect that to be as good as the gyro support in AYA devices, which, the kind of your mileage may vary on those.
Valve's really good about supporting hardware that they don't make. I've seen a million times where they're like, by the way, we added support for this controller that nobody's ever friggin' heard of to Steam input. And I was like, it like they don't make any huge benefit from that other than people like the things that they bought work with the other thing that they bought. And so it makes for a happier customer, but it's not like they don't make any money off that. It's just goodwill. They said that AYANEO Kun says the company expects the device to weigh more than 900 grams, which I think the Steam Deck is around 640 grams, if I remember correctly. This is about 2 pounds about. Russ, do you think, boy, you have a lot of handhelds. Do you have any handhelds that weigh that much?
I don't, but I do. I have like a thing I'll be making a video on here pretty soon, but it's called the Ally Mate. It's like the deck mate, but for the ROG Ally, and you put a battery pack on the back of it, basically, and that becomes a little bit over a kilogram. And so I know what weight they're talking about, and it is heavy. It is significant. Batteries are heavy, and so. The interesting thing about the Steam input side, the trackpads, is that I do think it is in Valve's interest to support it because it means that people are going to be more likely to use Steam to use the Kun because they're going to be like, okay, well, I want Steam input. You know what I mean? And if I'm going to be using Steam input, I'm going to be using Steam. I might as well buy a Steam game instead of like the Epic version. You know what I mean? Because it's just an extra layer that they have to deal with. And so I do think it is in Valve's interest to support it. And I really hope they do because the moment I saw those trackpads, I'm like, okay, cool. How are you going to pull that off? Like IA Space is so terrible already still, even though IA Space 2 beta just came out last night. And so I got an email about that, but all the same, it's AYANEO is not a company that I trust when it comes to the software side of things, in terms of having something that's non-buggy, but you're completely right about the placement as well. Can you imagine, if you can bring that picture back up again, imagine putting your thumbs on the trackpad and then also reaching for the triggers at the same time. It's going to be impossible. Right. It's very Ambernick-esque, basically, like with the Win 600, where they put the analog stick super low on the device. That is not going to be a comfortable solution at all. So those people are like, oh yeah, great, now I can do my trackpad gaming, playing Doom Eternal or whatever with trackpads. You're not going to want to do that. That placement right there is going to be super uncomfortable. And so I like the fact that AYANEO is going out and coming up with a new design. I got another email yesterday from them saying, hey, we've got another AYANEO Air device we want to send to you. I'm like, I have done 6 reviews with this shell. You know what I mean? Like I'm done, and so I'm still getting it. I'm going to do a review, but still, it's like, it's so nice to see a new model refresh in terms of just at least new designs, and that they're maybe using some components that worked really well with the other ones to come up with something better. I think the jump from the original AYANEO Next over to the AYANEO 2 is great, I think, in terms of just that design. And so if they're going to keep honing that, and this one to me looks a lot more ergonomic, just in terms of the grips and stuff. I'm looking forward to it. It is nice to have a beefy, big handheld like that. If they are going to have a dedicated GPU solution, this is going to be $2,000. So just kind of keep that in mind. Price-wise is going to be ridiculous. So
it's going to be super expensive.
I'm going to add one more.
Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, one more thing on the trackpads, because that's a good point with reaching the triggers. And that made me think about, there's a whole community out there of people that use dual trackpad. So they use the trackpad on the left to move, like WASD, WASD, and trackpad on the right to aim. And there's no way I can hold that all on just the bottom. And then it looks like it would tip over and not comfortable to hold.
Sit there and hold your Steam Deck where you're just holding you're pinching with the bottoms. And how long can you sit there and hold it for before you're like, okay, my thumb muscles, I'm a gamer, I got pretty good thumb muscles, they're starting to get tired from holding it like that. And now remember that this thing weighs twice as much as the Steam Deck, which when Valve announced that it was 600 or whatever grams, people were like, that's 1.4 Nintendo Switches. That's way too heavy. And then we got it in our hands. We're like, oh, it's actually pretty comfortable because it was really well balanced. I don't see this thing being nearly that well balanced, especially because in one of these pictures, they are trying to show off the battery. And this looks like really bad design, in my opinion. Those batteries are heavy. Look at this. For the audio listeners, I will describe it to you. But if you look at this picture, this 75 watt hour battery is all the way over on the left-hand side. Like, the battery's all the way over to the left, which means this thing isn't going to feel, and maybe it's just a render, I don't know, but it's not going to like, it's going to be all the heft is going to be on the left-hand side, and the right-hand side is going to feel like you got nothing in your hands at all.
I hope it doesn't get hot either. You know, having something, a heat source that close to your fingers is not going to feel good.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I replaced the shell on my Steam Deck, and JSOX had sent me the back plates, which I had just had like sitting under my desk for weeks, right? And then when they sent the front plate, they also sent a back plate, right? But I had just stacked everything under my desk because I didn't have time to get to it. And then when I finally got to it, I put the front plate on and I put the back plate on. And then when I was doing my Cyberpunk 2077 tests that I did for a video, I touched the back of the thing and I was like, holy freaking cow, that is hot. It was like really like hot enough that I thought I could have burned myself with that. And I looked and I had put on the old back plate that I don't think that they sell it anymore, where it is metal all the way through. So it's right over the back and it's metal all the way through. That thing was awful. I took that off and I put the newer black plate on that has plastic over the metal. That's not an issue. Like that one is perfectly fine. But I just wanted to let everybody know if you bought one of those ones that have like the metal on the back, don't friggin' use that because you're going to light your house on fire. That thing is so bad. Did any of you guys ever use one of those back plates with the metal all the way through?
Mm-mm.
All smarter than me. I wasn't even paying attention to it when I put it on there.
It just so happened in my case. Yeah, I just never got around to it.
I think it was like at hour 7 of the live stream, and I just put it on, and I didn't even pay attention that I had grabbed the wrong one. But don't use the old ones. What were you saying, Rich?
No, that was it. I just never got around to using that backplate. So I did see the reports and I asked because Taki was the first one, Taki Udon was the first one I saw to actually have it. And then he did a review before I even got my hands on it. So I asked him, like, because he mentioned the heat and he said it was fine. Like it wouldn't burn, but it was hot, but it wouldn't have burned him. That's how he put it. So I was put a little bit at ease, but I never got to try it myself.
Well, maybe he didn't run the Cyberpunk 2077
That's
benchmark, and because that thing, like, if I could not leave my fingers on there for very long. I had to take them off because my brain said, "Don't do this. You're stupid." So I listened to my brain because I was just testing. It was science. Like, there's this very funny XKCD comic that shows like a little button and a person pushes it. It says normal person pushes it. They get an electrocution. And then they say to themselves, well, I guess I shouldn't do that. And then you have the scientist walk in and they push the button, they get electrocuted, and they think, I wonder if that happens every time. Like, that's where my brain was. I wonder if is it still too hot to touch? Yes, it is still too hot to touch. All right. Last topic that I wanted to talk about before we get out of here, and we will have to do this one fast, although at the beginning, Russ said we could talk about that all day. Square Enix says it is considering remastering more old titles after the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster successes. And so I saw this and I was like, okay, which ones do you guys want? So first off, before we even go, everybody let us know in the comments, what old Square Enix games do you want remade modern? Let us know. Russ, what game would you pick?
So number one choice would be Final Fantasy IX, but I've heard that's already in the works. And so I'm not going to use that one as my choice because it's going to happen regardless. But I would be interested in seeing something not, it's the Square Enix part of it, the Enix side, I pay very little attention to like the Dragon Quest games. But the first Dragon Warrior was my very first RPG experience on the NES. It came free if you subscribed to Nintendo Power that first year. And I didn't have that, but a friend of mine did. And so he got it and we played through that thing. And that was an incredible experience. And I've never really played any other Dragon Warrior game since then. But, and me just kind of slowly or like tangentially paying attention to it. Dragon Quest VIII is one that I've always thought is going to be pretty neat. I like the art style. I've played like the first hour of that game over and over again, but never actually gotten into it. So that's one I think I would like to see remade is the Final Fantasy Dragon Quest VIII, the original one from the PS2. To see a remake of that one would be pretty neat, just with that kind of cool cartoonish, like cel shaded art style.
What about you, Rich?
That's a good question. One thing I like about Square Enix and their remaster so far is that they've been a little bit unpredictable. So like they've had the Crisis Core kind of pure remaster. They've had HD 2D remakes. They've had sort of complete remakes with FF7 and then the Pixel remaster, of course. So I'd like to see whatever they're going to do with whatever they're going to do it with. But I think my choice is going to be a non-RPG. I'm going to go with Parasite Eve. I think that would be a cool remaster, Parasite Eve from the PS1, and seeing how they would attack that today. I think even in its time, it was a sort of like a little bit ahead of its time, but also just, I don't know, it was not quite right in some ways. I love the atmosphere and stuff like that, but I felt like if they had made it 2 years later, even just 2 years later, it would have been a little bit different how they would have approached it. And so I'd love to see how they would approach it now.
What about you, Carrie?
There's only one answer that's the correct ansser.
I cannot tell you how many times he has said that exact sentence. Go ahead, man.
2D HD Chrono Trigger. I would like to see just a 2D HD. I don't think that they need to go like when they went. It doesn't need to be 3D. Like having just the 3D environments and tilt shifted and all that other stuff. I think there's a lot of areas where they can get pretty creative and that would look really dope. And especially just in the few things, and then redoing the cross ups, like how the battle system works with the different people, redoing the soundtrack. Just, it doesn't really need that much. It's already perfect. And then probably the only other correct answer is Final Fantasy VI 2D HD. Those are the two correct answers and only answers that anyone should ever say.
Well, I am going to give an incorrect answer. Not that I don't want to see those games. Although, when you said tilt shift, it made me think of Zelda. What's the
Link Between Worlds?
No, the one with the island where Link's Awakening.
Oh,
I would like instead of HD 2D, I would like to see Chrono Trigger remade with that art style where it looks like the Link's Awakening remake. I think that would look really, really cool. And I know it's 3D, but it's not really 3D. But that's not the one that I picked. The one that I picked is ActRaiser 2. And I really love that game, but I never really I never played it. It's one of those games that I had on all of my emulation systems, and I played it a little bit, and I was like, oh, this is actually really good. But it never hooked me. And I think maybe if they... Oops, that's the wrong button. Maybe if they... if they put it out again... and I wanted to find something that not everybody would pick, because I knew that I guaranteed that somebody was going to pick Final Fantasy 3 or 6, which depending on which country you live in, and of course Chrono Trigger. So both of those I knew were going to be mentioned. So I wanted to find something that wouldn't be mentioned. So ActRaiser 2, and I really like Russ's idea of the Dragon Quest series, because my first Dragon Quest, I played Dragon Warrior. on my NES back in the day, or actually on my friend's NES because I didn't own it myself. That was the last one that I played until Dragon Quest XI. I hadn't played any of the other ones, so I feel like I missed out. So that's a really good shout as well, Russ. I would like to see that. But let us know what Square Enix games you guys would like remade, and also leave your topics that you want us to talk about on the next show in the comment section if you're watching this on YouTube. If you are not watching this on YouTube, you're listening to this in your favorite podcasting app, make sure that you rate the star, however many stars that is the best or whatever, however, because it's different on different apps. But thank you guys for hanging out with us and listening to the show. And I guess that's going to do it for this episode of the NerdNest podcast. And we won't see Russ for a very long time. So Russ, why don't you go ahead and say goodbye to everybody while I click the finish button.
We'll see you guys later. It's only 3 weeks. It's all good.
3 weeks without Russ is a long
It's a long time.
All